Good morning. It's great to see everyone this morning. Thank you for joining in with us on our journey through John's Gospel. We are in day 8. We'll spend time in John chapter 8. I apologize for getting off to a later start this morning. I really enjoyed sleeping in. Didn't matter how many times I set my alarm, I hit the snooze button more. So off to a little bit later start, but thank you for jumping on here with us this morning or wherever you watch us throughout the day. I hope you guys are getting encouragement through this. I hope you guys are spending time in God's Word as you grow closer to Him. I do want to say a quick thank you to everyone who watched last night at the summit. Hopefully you feel encouraged by what God wanted me to share with you all. It was challenging for me. It was encouraging to me just to even spend time reading it, to spend time thinking through it. And so hopefully that encouragement went to you all as well. It's always encouraging to see you guys engage with one another, to see how your guys' small groups met last night. And hopefully we can continue that engagement this morning through this video. But John chapter 8 follows up where Jesus was in the temple yesterday in John 7, where he stood in the temple before everyone and declared that he would offer living water. Remember, the priest would take a pitcher of water that he got from the pool and he would dump it over the altar. But in that moment, Jesus stood up and says that I have living water. If you want this living water, you have to come to me. And that really set the divide between him and the Pharisees. The Pharisees and him really started having this argument, this debate about who he was, who he claimed to be, and who they were. That continues heavily in John 8. And John 8 really becomes a battle of what they know compared to who they know. What they know, meaning all the texts, all the scriptures, everything that they had learned and been trained in forever, compared to who they know. Do they really know the Lord? Do they really know who the Lord is? Because if they really knew the Lord, they would know Jesus. That's kind of his argument here. But the Feast of the Booths, the Feast of the Tabernacles is still going on, and one of the other cool things that they would do in that tabernacle, in the court of women, where the women were allowed to go into the temple, in that one of the outer courts, they would light these oil lamps that would be seen throughout all of the countryside, all of the hillside from the temple. Everyone could see these great lamps, these great lights, and everyone, when they saw these lights, as it filled up the night sky, they would dance, they would sing, they would worship. Really kind of calling back to that same Old Testament provision. Where we talked about how God provided manna from heaven. That's why Jesus said he was the bread of life. Yesterday he talks about how when Moses struck the rock and water came out, it was Jesus saying, I'm the one that offers living water. Today, it's, as you see the night sky lit up with all these lamps, celebrating the light that was given to lead them through the wilderness, that, the pillar of smoke by day and the cloud of fire by night. Just really talking about God's provision here. But Jesus stood before all of them, in his second I am statement that we have found so far in book of John. He says, I am the light of the world. He says clearly in verse 11, or verse 12, again, Jesus spoke to them saying, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. If you remember, John told us back in chapter 1 that this was true of Jesus. When he's going through the big kind of monologue, that kind of just prologue of who Jesus was. He says that he was the Word of God, and the Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. But he also says that the true light has come. The true light that has come, and the darkness will not overcome the light. So he told us in the very beginning that Jesus was the light of the world. And it kind of calls back to just even the beginning when it was darkness, but God spoke light into existence. That very light itself would be Jesus. And then John, the writer of this gospel, wrote in Revelation that there will come a day when there won't need to be a sun, there won't need to be a moon, that all we'll have is the radiance and the light of Jesus, that unfiltered light of Jesus. It also talks back to Isaiah 49, which Isaiah prophesied about this Messiah figure, who was Jesus here, that it will be a light for the nations, that his salvation may reach the ends of the world. Into the world. And so Jesus claiming, I am the light of the world. That's what he's saying here. I'm the light that was there in the wilderness. I'm the light that was there in the beginning. I'm the light that Isaiah talked about. I am the light of the world. If you follow me, you will not walk in darkness. And it goes on to start this debate. People started believing in Jesus, and every time someone believed in Jesus, the Pharisees would get more and more frustrated, and they started having this crazy debate with him about who their father was, who his father was, and the divide was getting huge. And you see the anger starting to really build up amongst the Pharisees. But the problem was that Jesus was exposing them was that he is the light of the world. Whoever loves him will not walk in darkness. People love to walk in darkness. People love to walk in the darkness is where you have pleasure. The darkness is where you enjoy your sin. The darkness is where you enjoy all the stuff in this world. And Jesus comes in and says, if you follow me, you don't walk in darkness. You walk in my light, and light exposes darkness. And Jesus here is exposing the darkness, not only in the Jews who are listening, but also in the Pharisees. Their darkness was their own graceless religion. Their darkness was their knowledge. Their darkness was their obedience to a religion that has no grace, that really has no master. And Jesus comes in to say this to them, and that really sets them off. I mean, they start this huge argument with him. They start debating with him, all because of their religion. And one writer I read said, the gospel is an unrelenting assault on a graceless religion, on all the way we try to avoid grace. These guys had no grace. You think about all the times that they saw someone healed by Jesus and they had a problem with it. They had no compassion. They had no grace. Their religion was built off of their duties. Their religion was built off of their abilities. And what we've seen so far throughout the Gospel of John is that it's all about Jesus. It's all about grace. It cannot be about your religion. And he starts having this dialogue with them. That's not sitting well with them, because he's basically telling them that their religion is getting them nowhere. They're not going to go anywhere unless they come to the Father through Jesus. And Jesus starts to offer them this freedom. He starts offering a freedom that nothing else can offer, but it has to come through him. And they say, like, who's your father? And he says, my father is the Lord. Who's your father? And they say, well, our father is Abraham. He goes, well, that's great. But Abraham didn't walk like this. Abraham didn't walk by that. He was justified by faith. He wasn't justified by his works. And he says that before Abraham, I am. And that was the icing on the cake for them. Because what he's saying there is that before Abraham ever existed, before your great father Abraham was there, I am. That's the all-knowing, all-powerful name of God. I am. So that's what God told Moses to tell the Egyptians, that I am, the all-existent God. And now Jesus is now saying, before Abraham, that was me. I am God. I am one with the Father. The Father is one with me. I am. And it is in that he starts claiming who he belongs to. He belongs to his Father. His Father belongs to him. He starts arguing with these people. It's like, who do you belong to? And that's when they say they belong to Abraham. And that's when he starts describing how Abraham lived compared to how they live. And it doesn't add up. The simple question is, if you belong to darkness, you're going to walk in darkness. If you belong to light, you'll walk in light. If you belong to Abraham, you'll walk like Abraham. And Abraham walked with the Lord. So if you're walking with Abraham, you're walking with the Lord. You're not walking with your religion. You're not walking with this graceless life that you live. But if you walk with Jesus, your life is marked by the way Jesus lives. But what Jesus kind of ultimately comes to is that they were claiming to walk with God, but he said clearly, you cannot claim God without claiming me. Because you have to come to me to get to the Father. I'm the one here to bridge that gap. I'm the one here to destroy that separation and bring you closer to him. That he was greater than Abraham. He was greater than darkness. He was greater than their religion. And he says here at the end, this is what's crazy to me. He says, you guys actually aren't children of Abraham. You're children of Satan. You're children of the devil. I'm like, holy cow. One of those things that you probably shouldn't say out loud in public. He says, you are children of the devil. That's whose father you serve. You serve the master of the air. You serve the master of darkness. You walk in his darkness. You love that darkness. And you serve him by the way you live, by the way you sin. And he says here clearly, if you are mine, you will walk in light. You will walk in grace. You'll walk in truth. And that truth will set you free. I offer freedom that the devil won't offer. I offer you freedom that your religion won't offer. If you want that freedom, you have to come through me. This entire story reminds me of something that my parents said to me growing up, and I know I've shared this with you all multiple times, and I know Dave Medley keeps it on a post-it note in his office. It says, whose child are you? Always remember whose child you are. And here Jesus is asking the question, whose child are you? Who do you belong to? Do you belong to Abraham? Do you belong to your religion? Do you belong to Satan? Do you belong to darkness? Or do you belong to God by being a servant of Jesus? And what he's trying to communicate clearly here by asking that question is this. We can all be children of something, But if we're children of religion, if we're pursuing religion, if we're pursuing darkness, all along we're going to be spiritual orphans. And you remember in John chapter 1, it says that Jesus came and offered us all the chance to become children of Him, children of God. Are you a child of God? And by answering that question, you can answer clearly whose child you are. Whose child are you? Who do you belong to? Think throughout the day. And the other question I have for you is this: who do you serve? Whose child are you? Who do you serve? Do you serve a religion, or do you serve Jesus? Do you serve the darkness, or do you serve the light? Because He is the light of the world. And that's who we serve. That's who we follow. In Him there is life, and in Him there is light, and that darkness will never destroy that light. That light will always overcome any darkness. Think about that throughout your day today, and hopefully you'll be encouraged to spend more time reading about this story of Jesus. Love you all.